Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible.
Welcome to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello, everybody. How is it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Welcome back to the Life and Happiness Podcast. I'm super excited to be here today. I am feeling so good. I'm officially graduated from my program. Woohoo! And I actually decided to drive home, back to my hometown to spend some time with my family and just give myself some time to relax and unwind and just unplug. I actually did a long road trip home. I did lots of detours and sightseeing, and I stayed at a little cabin and just completely went off the grid for a couple days and just got to relax and reflect on my big year. So I am feeling good. I'm feeling energized, positive, happy, excited, all those good feelings right now. And I am super excited to be sharing another episode with you on how to live your life to the happiest and the fullest. Today's episode was kind of inspired by me being back home, to be completely honest. Pretty much as soon as I turned 18 and I got up and I moved away from my hometown. And I grew up in a small town and I had a really difficult time throughout high school and stuff, and I just found that I was going through a lot mentally, and it was just not a good environment for me. And as soon as I turned 18, pretty much right out of high school, I got up and I left, and I found a healthier environment for me that was allowing me to meet people that were on the same wavelength as I was, and that was super good for me. And so since then, since being 18, I've done a lot of growing and self-discovery and improvement, and I feel so much different than I used to when I was back here at 18 years old. But through those tough years growing up and stuff, I always compared myself to everybody else, especially during high school. And that's why I think I had such a hard time, because I was never allowing myself to just be happy with myself. I always wanted something I didn't have, or wanted something that someone else had, or I was comparing this or that, and it all bottled down to me being unhappy. But I could not help but compare things, and this is when social media too was really starting to take off. And I use social media for all of the wrong reasons, like for validation and for comparisons and all these different things. And now I'm just on such a different wavelength when it comes to social media and me comparing myself to anything in general. So anyways, all of that, kind of being back in my hometown, it just I came home and I feel so different than I used to here. And it just inspired me to talk about this subject, and that's comparing yourself to others, because it is so important. And I feel like people, no matter what age we are, we compare ourselves to others. And I think it's definitely more prevalent when we're in high school, when we're in school, even university and stuff. It's hard not to compare yourself to others while you're still trying to figure out yourself in general, right? But it doesn't end, right? We're always going to compare ourselves, and especially with social media these days, it is so easy to look at somebody else's life, or what we think somebody else's life is like, through their pictures and Instagram stories and all those different things, and it's super easy to get bogged down about your own life, because, well, that person's doing that, and this person's doing that, and that person has that body, and how are they traveling across the world? How do they have this money? And it's really it's natural to compare yourselves. It's society trains us to compare ourselves using, outer socially constructed measures of success and worthiness, right? And this all includes your beauty, your age, your weight, your money, your social status, your marital status, all these different things. Like, where is your life at? Like, that's how society has trained us. And I think it's especially prevalent these days because of social media. And it's a super important topic that I think needs to be discussed more, because I know that if I really understood what comparing yourself to others did, I would have been a lot happier during high school, and I would have been a lot happier at 18 years old in my hometown, and maybe I wouldn't have wanted to get away so badly and find a different environment for myself. And so this topic is super important, and this topic hits home for me, literally hits home for me, because I can just relate to it. So I've learned a lot through myself, through my own self-discovery and improvement, and just being in a healthier environment for me. So I've learned a lot of different tricks and things that really help me stop comparing myself. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of those with you today. I hope this is helpful. It's not just high school time that this happens. It's our everyday life. While we're walking down the street, we can compare ourselves to others, and it's human nature. And that's why it's so important to be talked about, because it can have such a negative impact on our self-esteem and the way that we feel about ourselves. Because how many times have I said this in this podcast? Like, it's so important to, as cheesy as it is so important to practice self-care and self-love and understand yourself fully from the inside out and be happy with who you are at the end of the day, because that's who you have at the end of the day, is yourself, always. And of course, we're going to have family and friends and close people that we care about, but you are your own best friend. And the sooner that you can develop that best friend friendship with yourself, the sooner your happiness is going to be sustainable, and you are going to be able to live your life to the happiest and the fullest. So that is what today's episode is about, okay? So we're talking all about comparing yourself, how it can go good and bad ways. There's definitely good comparisons that we can do, and it can definitely improve some of the things that we do in our lives. But then, of course, there's the negative side to it as well. I'm going to be sharing you the first social comparison theory study that happened in 1954. Of course, I'm going to jump into how we stop those negative comparisons. And then I'm going to touch on social media, because it is very, very prevalent with comparing ourselves. I have a social media study that was recently done that I'm going to share with you. And then, of course, some tips on how we can stop comparing ourselves on social media and use it more appropriately. And then hang around to the end of today's episode, because I have I have my one big piece of advice that I think helps with comparing yourself in every single aspect of your life, even on social media. Doesn't matter what you're doing. This is my one big piece of advice that has helped turn my life around from comparing myself to others all the time. So stay tuned for that at the end of the episode, but let's jump right back in to this information. So society has trained us to compare ourselves to others. That is just, it's natural, it's normal. That's just what it is. And, understand that there's an extreme pressure on us to achieve these measures of beauty, age, weight, money, that social status, right? There's always that pressure from society and from everyone to achieve these high measures. But in reality, they're culturally derived ideas, okay? And it won't necessarily bring you that personal joy and fulfillment. Because it's not the same for everybody, right? And everybody is different, and you find your joy and fulfillment from within yourself. It's not your marital status, it's not your weight, it's not your money, it's not your beauty or your social status, whatever it is, you're going to find that within yourself. And that's the most important thing to remember. So if you continuously feel like you are less than, like you are not enough, you need to be asking yourself, how old is this feeling? And the thing is when we are comparing ourselves to others, like this starts at usually a young age it could be for so many different reasons, but usually it does start to develop at a young age, and we can definitely learn to have coping mechanisms and grow out of those things and implement healthier habits into our lives to get away from those feelings. But we can also develop comparisons later on in age as well. You know, maybe you go through a really bad breakup, or maybe you lose a loved one and it makes you, maybe you lost your job, you know, things like that. And it can really make you shift on the way that you view yourself and you view the world. And then that's when comparisons could start to happen. So there's no timeline, there's no, rhyme or reason. It can happen from a really young age due to your environment at a young age, or it can develop later on in life from a scenario or just low self-esteem. Whatever the case is, it's normal, it's natural. But it can go both ways, and measuring yourself against others is just a part of the human mind. And in some ways it can be helpful, because sometimes we compare ourselves to others and it gives us inspiration to reach our own achievements and reach our own goals. It can rev up that motivation to improve your own life. When you see somebody doing so good, it makes you kind of want to get up off of your butt and do good as well, right? And so it's that recognition that your abilities are, a notch above someone else's, maybe that can deliver a boost to your self-esteem as well. But then it can go on the other hand, and comparisons can be quite harmful when they leave you feeling, quite depressed and unmotivated and uninspired and just low about yourself. The most important thing to really understand here is that there is a huge difference in energy and outcome between seeing other people's success and using that vision to inspire you versus beating yourself up because of that or because where that person is. And this is all about the way that you're going to look at that situation for yourself. This is all going to be from your mindset, and it's not going to just happen overnight where you're going to just change and be inspired by those people that once made you feel really sad when you looked at their social media profiles. It's definitely not going to happen overnight, but it can happen. And it's the way that you talk to yourself, and it's the way that you look at things, and the way that you view yourself, and it's that inner dialogue that really helps you change your mindset from this negative outcome to a positive outcome. And that's what we got to try to do always, is focus on the good, focus on the positive. Okay, so it is time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. I have so much information I am going to jam into the rest of today's episode. Like, I got so much for you. It's going to be super beneficial, super interesting, things that I've learned myself, and things that we can implement into all aspects of our lives when it comes to comparing ourselves to others. So stay tuned. I will be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast. Hello. My name's Alyssa Joe, in case you forgot over the last 10 minutes. Hello. Okay, so I'm back. We're talking all about comparing ourselves to others. And I wanted to share this quote with you that Theodore Roosevelt once said. And he said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." So comparison is the thief of joy. And yes, that can be very, very true. When we are comparing ourselves and letting our mindset allow us a negative outcome from those comparisons, letting ourselves feel boggled down or uninspired or unmotivated from comparing ourselves to others or other situations, where if we try to switch our mindset, we try to talk to ourselves in a more positive way, we can change that to a positive outcome, of course, right? But there's so much that goes into it. And, we have to really define the way that we are looking at a person or the way that we're looking at a situation, and we get to decide how we feel about that. When we're scrolling through social media and we see something that bothers us, we start comparing ourselves to somebody else's life, especially on social media or in person. Someone's walking down the street. We get to decide how we feel about that situation. Are we going to let ourselves be boggled down because they're more fit than us? Or is that going to inspire us to get back in the gym and start working for those goals that you once had and you just let yourself get off track a little bit? How are you going to view those comparisons, right? How are you going to do that for yourself? So, and a lot of the time it's usually an unfair comparison. This is so true. Think about it. If you're walking down the street and, okay, let's say that you're walking down the street and you see this man who is just in the best shape ever. You can just tell, so toned, muscles, running, like sprinting down, doesn't even seem like he's put on a sweat, like just really, really great shape, right? Okay, and you see and you're like, wow, like and then you start comparing yourself to that person, right? And all you do is you look at, the chiseled muscles and the endurance and the way he's just sprinting down the street, and you're like, wow, I can't do that. Wow, no way. But you're forgetting okay, maybe he's 10 years younger than you. Maybe his metabolism is a lot faster than yours. Maybe he's a professional athlete. Maybe he's an Olympian athlete. Who knows what it is? But we compare ourselves, and usually 9 times out of 10, it's a super unfair comparison, but we don't pay attention to the things that those unfair properties. We don't think, oh yeah, well, he's 10 years younger than me. We just think, oh yeah, look at him go, like I can't do that. Right? So we forget to think of all sides of the comparison, and that's why it's usually so unfair of us to be comparing ourselves to others. So even if you compare your strength to a strength, like say you're comparing two people that say you feel quite, confident with something, and you're comparing yourself to someone else who feels quite confident with that particular thing as well. There's always going to be a who's better. It's just how it is. It's just going to be who's better, who does this better, who does that. Like, that's just how it is. And there's nothing, there's a who's better and there's a who's worse. And where are you on that ladder of accomplishments or purchases? And, that has nothing to do with the person that you are. The thing that really bothers me about comparing ourselves to others is that we always forget about our own achievements. We always forget about how far we've come. And we're always looking, oh, well, that person's better than me. I know I'm really good at this, but that person's still better. And we kind of disregard everything that we've done and our goals that we've reached, and we just focus on somebody else. And it's just such a waste of time, because we got to focus on what we did and like our accomplishments, because that's what's important is ourselves. Be selfish, people. Focus on you. But we end up, resenting others for doing well sometimes. And without really knowing that true person, you can see if you've ever resented someone upon first meeting them. Like, have you ever walked up to somebody and just been like, they start talking about their achievements or who they are. You knew who they were before you started talking to them, and you're just, oh, I already don't like them. Because of that little bit of jealousy in you, that little bit of resentment. Yeah, it's natural. It happens more often than you think. And sometimes, too, we might end up talking about our own accomplishments more than is necessary. Sometimes people kind of do this as like a gloat. Oh, yeah, well, I did this. Oh, yeah, well, I did this. And this is usually a cover-up of those inner comparisons that are actually happening in that inner dialogue. So you also might try to criticize someone in public, trying to knock them down, which is often very unfair as well. But that's another cover-up for the crippling comparisons you are having in your inner dialogue. So I want to share this social comparison theory that happened in 1954 by a psychologist named Leon Festinger. And he hypothesized that we make comparisons as a way of evaluating ourselves. So at its root, the impulse is connected to the instant judgments we make of other people, and it's a key element of the brain's social cognition network that can be traced to the evolutionary need to protect oneself and assess threats. So inevitably, we relate information about others to ourselves, right? That's why we're comparing ourselves. We look at that person running down the street that's running so fast and has so much muscle definition. And what do we think about? We think about ourselves. We think about how we're maybe out of shape, how we haven't been on a run in 10 months, whatever the case is, right? It's always back to ourselves. And so it's one of the most basic ways that we develop an understanding of who we are. what we're good at and what we're not so good at. And it happens not only, in this like kind of strategic manner, but it's also spontaneously and automatically whenever we are confronted with others. It is happening when you don't even think it's happening. And even when you're faced with a standard that is quite extreme, first you're going to compare and then you correct for the outcomes. Okay, so this is so true, right? It is really us trying to understand ourselves, but we're going at it in a negative way. Unless we're able to change our mindset and look at those outcomes as a positive, usually we're comparing ourselves and we're trying to evaluate ourselves or understand ourselves, but we're looking at it in a kind of a negative perspective, as if you are not enough. And the thing is, we have to always focus on, I am enough, always. Always, 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 no matter what. And yes, that person may be able to run longer than me. That person may have more muscle definition than I do. But I am working towards that goal. Look how far I've come. 10 years ago, I weighed 30 pounds more maybe. Whatever that case is, right? So we always have to remember that we have to evaluate and understand ourselves, but we have to look at it in a healthy, positive perspective. So that we can really use those things to grow. Because when we're looking at it and always these negative comparisons, we're not going to grow from that. That's actually belittling ourselves, and it's putting ourselves down, and we do not want to put ourselves down. That is not good for anything, okay? So how do we stop the negative comparisons? And I think the most obvious, and I shouldn't say easy answer to this, but the most obvious thing that we can be doing is just become aware of our thoughts. And we got to change that self-hating, inner dialogue, that narrative inside of us. And so begin to gain awareness of each harsh or judgmental thought that you have of yourself in comparison to others, and then start to see more clearly when and how you judge yourself and how hard you are on yourself. So every time you recognize a self-hating thought, just say to yourself, there goes one of these judging thoughts, and then release it. So basically what you're doing is you're becoming aware of it. You can even let yourself have that thought for a second, but you need to be fully aware that that is a negative judgment thought and that is not true. And you got to change your dialogue and switch it around. And you got to release that negative sentence and change it to a positive sentence. Okay. So and then when you start changing your dialogue, once you become aware and you're changing that dialogue, and you've done this for a week straight, you're already going to notice how tough you are on yourself. First of all, you are going to see how many times you judge yourself, how many times you look in the mirror and compare yourself, how many times you're scrolling through your Instagram feed and feel low or negative or compare yourself to some supermodel traveling the world. Like, come on, right? And you're going to really start to realize how much you do that. And then once you realize how much you do that, you're going to start realizing how much of a negative impact it has on yourself. And then you're going to actually start actively switching those negative sentences in your head, those negative comparisons, and you're going to start switching them to a more positive sentence, a more positive comparison. Like, I'm not even saying stop comparing yourself to others, because like in that study, it is so true. That's how we evaluate and understand ourselves. We have to compare ourselves to others or to other situations, right? Like, it helps us grow. So I'm not saying just completely stop comparing yourself to others. I'm just saying how to change your perspective on the way that you compare yourself to others, right? It's not just about comparing or not comparing, because we're going to compare. Like I said in the first half of this podcast, is that it's human nature. It's natural. It's part of like our human mind to compare ourselves. So don't try to resist that, because it's never going to be sustainable. Compare yourself, but look at it in a more positive way. Change that inner dialogue so that you're sending positive energy to yourself, so that you're setting her up for a positive outcome. Okay? So it's all about changing your perspective, changing that inner dialogue. I'm never going to tell you to stop comparing yourself to others, because it's impossible. Even you maybe can do it for a bit, but it's not sustainable. And then you're going to fall right back into those negative patterns. So don't stop your comparisons. Just change the way that you are comparing yourself to someone else or to a situation. Okay, it's time for another break, but don't go anywhere. I have more information to share with you. I'm going to give you some more tips on stopping those negative comparisons and changing the inner dialogue for yourself. And then we're going to jump into the social media aspect of it. I have a quick study I want to share with you, a few tips on how to use social media more appropriately so you are not comparing yourself in a negative way. And then I'm going to share my one big piece of advice that has made a huge difference in my life when it comes to comparing myself to others. So stay tuned. I got lots more fun things to share with you. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the last stretch of GSMC Life and Happiness podcast. Hello, I'm Alyssa Joe. Okay, we're talking all about comparing ourselves. If for some reason you're just tuning in now, you missed a really good first half of the episode. So go rewind and listen to it. But now let's finish off today's episode with more information. How can we stop comparing ourselves? How can we stop comparing ourselves in a negative way? Okay? That's the wording I need. So we're going to become aware. We're going to change that self-hating narrative inside of our head. We're just going to stop ourselves and we're going to take a deep breath. Okay? Next time you see yourself scrolling through social media and you're looking at a post and you're zooming in, why does this look like that? How does her body do that? What is this? Like, how is he traveling the world? Stop, breathe, and just sit for a second. Okay? Just sit for a second. This is going to help you become more aware in the moment. Take 10 deep breaths, okay? Take 10 deep breaths, stop, and think. And think about you. Don't beat yourself up on that image that you're staring at or your social media page. Think about you in that moment, okay? Say 3 things that you are grateful about yourself. I am grateful for my work ethic. I am grateful for my smile that I enjoy. Whatever it is, okay? Say 3 things that you love about yourself that you are grateful for, and then keep scrolling, keep moving on. Even while you're walking down the street, stop, take a breath, tell yourself 3 great things that you love about yourself, and then move on, okay? Focus on your strengths, instead of looking at your weakness, ask yourself what your strengths are and celebrate them. Be proud of your strengths. Don't brag. Don't go off and try to cover up your inner negative comparisons by bragging about all the good things that you're doing. Don't. Just feel good about you. Work on using them to your best advantage and make the most out of your life and with your strengths as well. Okay? I did this workshop in high school actually, and it was an all-women's workshop. I think I've shared this story maybe on this podcast before, but I'll just quickly go through it. Is that we did this workshop in school and we had to compliment somebody else in our table. Just anything that we wanted. We just had to give them a compliment, okay? And it could be anyone you wanted. You can compliment whatever you wanted, right? And I think it was a body image thing though. It was a body image workshop for a lot of it. And so you had to compliment something of their appearance, of their body, of whatever, right? So I remember I had this one friend, she was super, super tall, and I complimented her legs. I said, "Oh, you have very nice, tall, thin, like muscular legs." And we went around the table and everyone said their thing, right? And people were complimenting on people's hair or people's smile, people's eyes, people's body image, people's stomachs, like things like that, right? And the thing that after, so we all complimented each other one thing, and then the leader of the group, she goes, okay, so think about that. Now, the thing that you complimented is probably the thing that you don't like about yourself. And it's so true. I am a very small person. I am 4'11", okay? And I've always really just wanted long legs. And so I never even thought of it that way, right? I never even thought of that, but I just complimented her legs because I genuinely was like, wow, you have very nice, long, muscular legs, which is something that I've always wanted, was long, muscular legs. And it's funny how we do that, right? And I know this is kind of like a compliment exercise that we did, but it's the same way we like compare ourselves. Like you'll find yourself comparing yourself to someone of something that you don't like about yourself. So maybe it's somebody's legs, maybe it's their hair, maybe it's their abs, maybe it's the way that they're traveling the world and you're stuck in a small town and you're trying to make money so you can get out. Whatever the case is, right? We compare things that we don't have. So focus on your strengths, so focus on the things that you do love about yourself, and you're going to stop those negative comparisons. That was, sorry for that long story, but I hope it was kind of helpful because it really made me realize, oh yeah, you're right. Like that is something I didn't like about myself, and that's something that I wish I had. And so I compliment others on that because I'm comparing myself to others. And that was a positive kind of way to go about it, but it still really made me realize kind of that inner dialogue I had about my own legs. Okay, now the thing next is focus on your journey and just learn to love enough. You are enough. You are enough now. You were enough yesterday, and you're going to be enough tomorrow. And you have to learn to love yourself and love being enough for what you are right now. You got goals, you got dreams, you got aspirations, you got things you're looking forward to, you got things you're working your butt off to achieve. I know that, especially if you've been listening to this podcast since day one. You're here to self-improve and to develop yourself into this whatever life that you want to live, right? And I'm here to help you live that life to the happiest and the fullest. And so you are here and you got goals. I know you do. So focus on your goals, focus on your journey, focus on those healthy comparisons that are going to get you further, not bring you down. Focus on you. Be selfish. Focus on your goals. Focus, focus, focus. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about social media. And there was this recent study, it was in the Cyber Psychology, Behavior, and Social Networking Journal. And it found that Facebook, that the use of Facebook can be associated with lower self-esteem, poorer mental health, and greater body shame. And those who have left Facebook immediately experience a boost in life satisfaction and positive emotions. That is a fact. Okay, that was a study. And then a few years ago, some other researchers at Lancaster University examined studies from 14 countries, 35,000 participants over the age of 15, and they determined the link between social media and depression. And they found that frequent Facebook users often compare themselves with others, leading to overthinking, which can manifest to feelings of depression. And the study also found that feelings of jealous of your Facebook friends, following individuals that bring on negative emotions, such as an ex, and making negative social comparisons and posting negative status updates are also predictors of depression. Okay, social media is wonderful, but there is a love-hate relationship for a lot of us. And I know with that in social media, if we use it appropriately, it is wonderful. But then there is that side of social media that can really get us down this rabbit hole of negative emotions and thoughts. So we really have to learn how to use it appropriately. And with social media being so prevalent, it is the easiest way that we can compare ourselves. We don't even have to leave our house to compare ourselves to others anymore. We just flip open our phone, and any app you want to go on, there you go. You got comparisons for days, right? So how can we use social media effectively so that we're not comparing ourselves to others? And the tips are relatively the same, right? You got to become aware. You got to stop and pause and take 10 deep breaths and think about yourself. And all those things can apply to social media as well, right? Do some self-reflection. Think about you. Don't think about others. But something that's really helped me with social media is muting or blocking the people that I don't want to see or that make me feel low about myself. So do a detox of your social media. Go through your followers, go through who you follow, go through your saved posts, go through everything, right? And start to just mute people or accounts that don't make you feel good. And now if you want to mute them, this way that that all that means is that none of their stuff will come up on your feed. It means that you still follow them, they still follow you. So there's no controversy with that, because we know that, sometimes blocking can add a little controversy with people, but and it's nothing that you don't want to follow them. Maybe you just need some time away, right? You just need some time to not look at that account for a while. Or if it is an account that you can just unfollow, block, delete, definitely do that. But I just find that muting sometimes can be good for people that we may know in life that make us feel crappy on social media just from our comparisons. So muting is super helpful. So go through, detox those things, mute those accounts, block the accounts, whatever you want to do that. That is huge for social media comparisons. And then just take some time away. Like I said, I unplugged for a couple days at a cabin. 2 days was not enough. I realized how much I really enjoy not being on my phone all the time, not being able to just grab it and scroll through Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever it is. I really enjoyed just being present with myself. I found that I had so much more time because we get lost on our social media pages, right? And I found that I felt better about myself because I wasn't thinking about anything else other than me. I was thinking about, what do I want to do next? What do I want to eat later? I was thinking those things instead of, oh, what is this person doing? What is this person doing? What are they looking like these days? Whatever a case is, right? So just take some time away. Take some time away from social media. 2 days, 1 day, 24 hours, a week, 2 weeks, months, I don't know, whatever you can do it, because limiting your time on social media is super, super beneficial. You can also just set yourself time limits, saying I can be on social media from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day, and then 6 to 7:30 at night, and those are my social media times, or those are my electronic times, right? So whatever works for you in your lifestyle, but this is super, super beneficial to stop comparing yourselves to others. Okay, now, here we go. I have one big piece of advice. I feel like you probably would have kind of figured it out through this entire episode with what I've been talking about, but this is my number one piece of advice for comparing yourselves to others, is don't stop comparing yourself to others, because it's going to happen naturally. But what you should do more of is compare yourself to yourself. Okay, now this has been super beneficial. When we start focusing and channeling our energy towards ourselves, even comparing to ourselves, you're going to see such a huge difference in your mental health, but as well as your motivation and how much you're achieving your goals and what you're going after. Because when you track your progress, you pay attention to what you're doing, and you can compare yourself to those things, that's how you're going to continue to grow. Okay, so compare how you felt last week to this week. Are you reaching your goals? Did you fall off track last week maybe? How are your eating habits last week? How are your eating habits this week? Have you improved? Have you taken a step back? Right? And these are the best comparisons that you can do, is your own comparison on yourself, on your own goals, on your own habits. I recently decided to write down all of my goals, all of my habits that are going to align with those things. And I'm going to have a new episode coming out with talking about that, because it's super important. And then, it's really important to have those goals, have those habits, but also keep track on them so that you can compare yourself to yourself. This is the healthiest, best comparison that you can do, because you really just see your growth. But this is hard to do if you don't track your progress. So I highly suggest keeping a goal journal or a habits journal or whatever, and track where you're going, track how you're feeling, write down how you feel each week, really pay attention. Did I work out 5 times a week like I promised myself, or did I only work out twice? And this week, what am I going to do? And then that way you can kind of evaluate yourself, understand yourself, and figure out what your next step is so that you can grow and improve. Well, that is the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed sharing all this information with you. That's really made a huge difference in my life. So thank you so much for listening to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. I so appreciate you being here. Head over to that subscribe button. Click that button. I have new episodes up every single Monday and Thursday. Woohoo! And head over to our social media pages. I update those regularly. I would love to chat with you and engage with you. We have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So go talk to me on there. Follow and like as well. You already know what to do. Leave a 5-star review. I love reading the reviews, and it makes a world of a difference. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay positive, stay healthy, and focus on yourself. Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.